remembers all the people and all the things that happened. She's one of the best people to get hold of.
Yes, we want lots of different people.
Yeah, that's the thing. The more people we can get, the better. Because then, it's a little bit like a jigsaw, really. That the more pieces you've got, then the bigger the picture.
As long as we don't contradict each other.
Oh, I'm sure you will, but I mean that won't really matter. It's the events more than anything, isn't it?
Were you born in the village?
Yes, I was born in the house where Mrs. Black lives.
What, Green Vine?
Yes, that's
Oh,
right.
yes.
It was called Vine Cottage then.
And that used to be a pub too, didn't it?
Ah, yes, that was before our time.
Oh, it was even before then, wasn't it?
Oh, it wasn't a pub in our time.
Oh, I see. I understood it was until fairly
It was
recently.
a pub before ours.
Because what was it? The Green Dragon or something, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's what it was, but not in our time.
Yeah.
It was Vine Cottage.
Yeah.
It was. Yes, that's where I was born.
And what about your family? Were they local as well? Father and mother?
My mother came from Faradine, and my father, his father was living in Netheravon, but he had been a long-term soldier, my granddad. He was in the Wilts Regiment, or whatever they called it, the old 62nd or something, is what they called it in those days, didn't they? And he'd spent years in India. My father grew up in India. He was about 15 or 16 when they came home. And then he was a postman.
What, your father?
My father. There's a few old people, like Mrs. Hunter. There'll be a few old people who would actually remember and I think Dick Pinchon is remembered too, when he was postman. Yes.
Because I think your father was on the parish council quite a lot too, wasn't he?
Yes, he was on things in the village, yes. That's right, in the village hall committee after they got the village hall.
Yeah.
I think he did their secretary work or treasurer, something like that for me.
Yeah. So I suppose your recollections of the village must be fairly similar to Mrs. Blake's,
Yes, that's right.
Pre-roads and all this sort of
That's
thing.
right. I was about, I suppose I was about 7 when she came to Fiddleton School.
Yeah.
I was in Standard 1 or Standard 2, just got up into the big room. We had the 2 classrooms, one for the infants and one for the others from about 7 years old now.
Who was your teacher?
Well, I had Mrs. Blake for about a couple of years. Well, she wasn't Mrs. Blake then. It was before she was married. She was Miss Sawyer when she came here. And then we had Mrs. Capel. I expect Mrs.
Yes, she told us about her.
Mrs. Capel.
Yeah.
That's right. She was the headmistress. What happened was that the numbers of the children got up over 60. Mind you, this was just Fiddleton and Haxton children. And they thought that Mrs. Cable ought to have someone to help her a bit because she'd got the children from about 7 to 13 or 14, all those different ages, doing different work, you see. And so we had
Miss Sawyer.
Well, Miss Sawyer, she was, and she came and took sort of Standard 1 and 2 and helped with the needlework and things.
Yeah. Well, so Netheravon School just did the children of Netheravon.
Netheravon School just had Netheravon, that's right.
2 separate things.
That's right, quite separate.
Yeah.
Oh, we were more separate than we are now.
Yeah.
You are see old people, that bridge was, almost a barrier.
Customs
You know,
post.
honestly it was.
Was it?
You know, I can remember as a little girl, my mother sending me over to the shop, the one that the spar shop now, and we didn't like to go because if we met some of the Netheravon children on the bridge, they tried to shout at us or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like that.
Was there stores here then, though, in the old post office?
Yeah, there was a little, just a little grocery shop there.
Yeah.
But we used to have to go over there if we wanted bread, and sometimes my mother made dough cake, and we would go and fetch the dough for her to make it with, from the bakehouse. That sort of thing.
No.
We didn't go in there very much.
Because, of course, you had the post office here as well, didn't you, in Haxton?
Not in those days.
No? Still just the one?
The post office came in about 30, 36, 37.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I expect Alfie would, or some other people up your way would know that. Do you remember the Mr. Powell who came to take the shop? Well, then after he'd been here a little while, people asked him if he wouldn't like to do a post office. And they got up, one woman got up, what she called it, a round robin. She went around the village and got everybody to sign a paper saying they would like a post office. And that's how we got it. It would have been about 36 or 37, 2 or 3 years before the war.
When did your schooling finish here?
Well, I went to Fitterton till I was 11, then I went to the Bishop's School.
Was it Salisbury?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
In those days, the Bishop's School was boys and girls, because they hadn't built the South Roads. When I was there, they were talking about it, but I was there all through the First World War. And they were waiting for the war to finish before they could build what they now call the South Wilts for the girls. So the Bishop's School had boys and girls, but it was very overcrowded. And we had 3 classes, 3 forms, as we called them, in the School of Art in New Street. You know what I mean?
I think I know what you mean.
Because I was around there for, I think it was 3 years, the first 3 years. And then we used to have to trail round to the other place, Friday mornings we went round to have a service in the chapel and that sort of thing,
Yeah. So what did you do? Did you live in Salisbury or did you travel?
No, you couldn't in those days. You couldn't get in and out every
Well, that's what
day.
I thought.
We had a carrier's van about on Tuesday and Saturday, something like that. Oh, no, you had to stay there.
Yeah.
So there was a girls' hostel run by a very strict lady who was in charge of us. And we lived there, and we just came home for holidays.
Not even at weekends?
No, well, now and again we did, but not regularly, because I've walked from Dover Station several times. Yes, we used to do that sort of thing. You just had to, because there wasn't the transport there is now. They don't know anything about it now.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's hard to imagine not having the roads, for instance, because your roads wouldn't have been so good then, would they?
No.
And then you've got all your water on tap and electricity.
That's
Whereas, you've got a pump out in the front.
Yes, that's where we got our water.
But I mean, how long ago did you stop using that then? Because I suppose when the Mead
after they built those council houses over in Meadowville, they connected us up to them for some water. I don't know who else was on, but just this road was connected up to there. And then, of course, later on, when the water came through for everybody, we were put onto that. But for a while, we were on to the same as the council houses.
Because Meadowview is relatively modern. It must have been no earlier than the mid-50s, was it? They built those? Because Reggie Shepherd's farm was out there somewhere, wasn't it?
Well, let's see. Vic and Betty came down there into one of them new. Wait a minute. The middle 1950s it would be.
Yeah, I would have thought no earlier than that, anyway. Because I can remember Red Shepherd's farm there.
It was in the 50s because Sandy was born there. They just got settled in before she was born. It's in the middle 50s when they were built.
So you weren't on the water till then?
We weren't on the water till then. We had the pump. Yeah. You can imagine what it was like when it was cold, frosty weather. Yeah. Before tea, we would go out with 2 or 3 buckets or whatever we had and fill everything up. And then we used to wrap sacks and things over the top to try and stop it getting too frozen, because it would be such a problem in the morning to thaw it out again. And then I went to Fiddleton School.
Yes, you were at
Till I
Fiddleton
was
School till
11.
you were 11. Was it a sort of scholarship that you
Yes,
passed?
we had to sit a scholarship exam.
So did your parents have to pay anything towards it?
They had to help pay a bit towards the lodgings,
Yes.
you know, at the hospital, but nothing to the school.
No.
No.
And you stayed there until you were 16, perhaps?
No. I went in there and went, wait a minute. I was 11 and I finished, I did 6 years. I was 18, 17, between 17 and 18. Yeah, because I stayed on, well, like you would now for A-levels, you know. Only we didn't call it A-levels and O-levels. They used to call it the Oxford exam.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, it used to be Oxford Junior and Oxford Senior. And it was different from them. Now they just pick 4 or 5 subjects what they can do best, don't they? We had to take everything. Do you remember it? Whether you were good at it or not, you took the blooming lot.
Yeah.
You know, 2 or 3 art papers and arithmetic, algebra, Euclid, everything.
And presumably you passed that, okay?
Yeah.
So what did you do when you left school then?
I went never in school. I was teaching there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Mind, in those days you didn't have to go to college like you would nowadays. You wouldn't have you like it now.
And then what? Presumably you married while you were at
Yeah.
school?
I left school and I got married.
Yeah. And who was it you married? I can never remember.
You can't remember my this?
No, because how long ago did he die then?
I'm
must be-
71. It was the beginning of February in 71. It's
Oh,
30,
that's nice.
almost 13 years
But
ago.
you know, I can never ever remember it. I don't know why.
I bet you can.
Or perhaps I can, but you know, it's gone from my mind.
But you were only a girl. Actually, you weren't very old.
I don't know, 71. I was 23 then. I should
Yes.
have known. But I can't.
What did he do? What was his job?
He was over at the estate yard at Darlington. He was a sort of yard foreman. By trade, a carpenter.
Yeah.
Joiner. But then he was involved in the things in the village, bell ringer, fire, village hall and all.
Yeah. Did he get called away during the war at all with services?
Well, he was too old to be called up. He was in the First World War.
Oh.
He was too old to be called up in this war, but he was in the, what did they call it?
Wiltshire Yeoman.
No, that's what he was when he was in it, Wiltshire Yeomanry, yes, that's what he was.
Home Guard.
That's not the Home Guard, but the ARP.
Yeah.
The ones who you had to walk around the village and see that nobody had any lights showing.
Yeah.
And if you heard the siren, he was up. If he was in the middle of the night, he'd get up and go out and see what was on, and everybody was all right. That's what he did. The boys, two of my boys went in the Home Guard before they went into the army.
Yeah.
Vic and Peter, before they were old enough to be in the army, they were in the Home Guard.
Yeah. We've got a photograph of him, haven't we?
We have, yeah.
Have you got one of a group of them down
That's
there
right.
near the post office?
Yes.
The whole lot. No, that's a different one. There's two. Oh no, that's the dedication of the Legion. That other photograph, isn't it?
Oh, was it?
But we've got the big one with them all in uniform
Oh, yes.
and the medals and everything else. You know, some of the ones I did recognise: Wilfrid Pierce and Fred
Yeah.
Hitchcock. I can't remember who as well. Sorry. What's that? That's a
My
service one,
husband's
isn't it?
that's about 1916.
Is it?
First World War time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about when you were a little girl then, going to Fiddleton School?
What you can remember of it.
Yes. What do you want to know? We used to go with several of us.
Did you have sisters and brothers there with you?
I've got No, I'm the eldest. I've got two sisters younger. You
Yeah.
know Mrs. Bailey. Well, you know Ron Bailey.
I know Ron, yeah.
Well, his wife. She's my next sister.
Oh, is she? I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Then I got another sister down at Ringwood. She was a nurse.
Oh,
And we all three went to the Bishop's School, one after the other.
Well, you all passed the scholarship?
Yeah. Yes.
how many children passed at your year then?
I think it was only me.
Yeah.
Because in those days, people didn't go in for it very much.
No.
Not like they would now, I think.
I suppose a lot just did their schooling and got to work, did they?
They went and left school. Yes, some of them left it. I think they used to leave at 13, didn't they?
I think that was about the age,
Had a
wasn't it?
job to go to.
Because I suppose there would have been a lot of employment at that time. With their
Yes,
farms,
everybody.
whatever.
There was no unemployment at that time. They went on the farms or found something to do.
Yeah.
Not like it is now.
Can you remember people in the big house up there at all? You know, the Hicks Beaches?
Manor?
Yeah.
Yes. It used to be let to army officers.
Mm.
So they would come there perhaps for 2 or 3 years and then be posted somewhere else and somebody else would come. I don't know if I can tell you a name.
Oh no, you can't remember it as, you know, the Hicks Beaches.
I can remember the ladies' 6 beaches coming back.
They came back, did they?
Yes, they came, those 2 sisters, they came back and lived there.
Yeah.
So they got ill and had to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It was
they,
theirs, it was in their family.
yeah.
You see.
So you don't remember the squire riding round the village or any of that sort of business?
Well, of course, the army people, we used to see them go by.
Mm.
And I remember the farm, Knockley at the farm, where Johnny Lamond is, he used to have a little sort of cob, would you call it, a small sort of short horse, which he used to ride round his farm. He was a sort of gentleman farmer. He used to ride round to see how the work was on, you know.
Mm.
And his wife used to play the organ in church and take the choir practice.
Were you ever in the choir?
No, I wasn't in the choir. I can't sing good enough for that. My dad could sing.
Yeah.
And my husband, he had a lovely tenor voice.
I suppose when you were younger, church going was much more. Was it expected more of people then?
Oh, yes, we used to go to Sunday school and went to church. People used to go more then. But I think nowadays they've got cars and they go out for a drive on Sunday if it's nice and that sort of thing, don't they? Whereas they used to go to church more than they do now. We used to, when we were at school, the ones who were over about 7 or 8, the big school, the big room children, if you know what I mean, we used to play out in the road, outside the playground, because in those days the playground wasn't quite as big as it is now. You know, I expect a few years ago a bit more was added on, was it? Since Mr. Pink's been there?
What, to the school?
Or might be a bit longer. They took in a bit more of the Warren and made it a wee bit bigger.
I can remember the trees in the Warren.
Yes.
They came
yeah,
right up to the
it
back.
wasn't very big, and the bigger ones, we could go out on the road and play, because there was nothing coming along any more than a horse and cart, and I mean, you could hear that coming and get out of the way, so we used to play out on the road. And I can remember us having a long skipping rope right across, tied on the fence, sort of at that end, right across to the other side where Mrs. Shepherd lives, obviously. And then we used to all, you know, somebody used to turn it and used to run in and out, you know.
the games used to go in phases in those days, didn't they? Did you ever have tops?
Oh yes, there was a season for tops when you all went off to school. Fancy ripping tops up the street now.
Yes.
Yes, you went off to school with your top. And then when after the tops there'd be hoops.
That's
And
right.
everybody had a hoop. And there was marbles. And what's that other thing? Hopscotch. And it was funny, they all came round in turn. You did them all for a little period, and then you did something else. And it happened like that each year. And rings, we played rings, out in the road here. Doing great big rings, boys and girls all the lot.
I don't remember. What game is that then? Rings?
Well, you make a ring, you hold hands each side, and you've got a great big circle. And then you sing some old rhyme.
Oh, yeah.
Like Sally go round the sun, Sally go round the moon, what's it, Sally go round the chimney pot on the Sunday afternoon. Whoop! You stick up your leg like that. Then you go back round the other way. Yes, we used to. There was two or three other, other rhymes as well. Something about in and out the window. Out the window, that's right.
I don't remember any of those. All cowboys and Robin Hood and stuff.
I went to a little village school, I can remember that sort of thing.
You used to do it, that's right. No, you're too young, Tony. That's what's the trouble.
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I was even younger. Mind you, we've probably got it a lot easier now than they ever had then.
Well, it all depends.
When you lived in the green vine cottage,
Yes.
where did you get your water? Was there a pump
We
in the
had a
back?
pump just outside the back door.
And did 2 or 3 cottages share it?
Us and the people next door, which was in fact my granddad and grandmother lived next door. And so we children had the run of all their garden.
Yes.
And they had a lot more than Mrs. Dryden had in recent years, because the kitchen garden for her house ran along where Peter Hayward has now built his house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It ran along to the manor wall.
Oh, yeah.
So there was quite a lot of kitchen gardens. So we girls, we had all that to play in. So we never went out in the road to play. So we played in our garden, and we got a clump of hazelnut bushes in one corner, which we used to climb in and all play houses in. We had a lovely place, really.
Well, do they all come under the same ownership there now? Somebody was saying that
Yes,
Mrs. Black owns the whole
Yes,
road.
when it was sold, she's got both houses.
Yeah,
And the garden behind.
yeah.
But Peter Hayward bought what was the sort of kitchen garden belonging to Mrs. Dryden's house,
Yeah.
where he's built his, you see, because that kitchen garden used to run across to the manor
The
wall.
wall, yeah.
Because that cottage, the green vine cottage,
Yes,
has lovely panelled walls inside, hasn't it?
yes.
Yes.
In the, what used to be our front room or sitting room, has got wooden panels all round. Yeah. It's a nice old place. Oh, Mrs. Black took me in there once since she's been there.
Yeah.
When she found out that that's where I live, she said, she took me in one Sunday after church to go and see.
Yeah.
It's altered a bit, but not all that much. That room has still got the panelled walls all round and the same sort of fireplace and all.
Yeah. I was just looking at this. What's that oven on top of it?
Yes, but I don't use that. I've got electric one.
Yeah. No, I've not seen one like that before.
Oh, this is an ancient old thing.
Yeah.
Awful old. Triplex it's called. It's ever so old.
Did all the houses have one of those at one time?
Pardon?
Did all the cottages and houses have something like that? You know, with an oven or whatever?
No, we had, before that, we had a thing like a lot of them had, I forget what they called it now.
Range.
That's right, a sort of kitchen range, that's it.
That big cast iron type thing. Or...
What's the name of that black lead?
Oh,
Zebra or
yes,
something.
yes.
Zebra.
Did Mrs. Blake tell you about when there was an epidemic of scarlet fever? Didn't she? Well, it wasn't long after I started school. We had an epidemic of scarlet fever. And it was in the summertime, and then somebody organised a camp, a tented camp, up over Haxon Hill, about opposite Marlborough Trees in the field. And all the patients were taken up there, like a hospital, you know, only it was tents. It was middle of summer.
Yeah.
And we had no school for several weeks before the summer holidays time. And we didn't go out, we three girls, we didn't go out anywhere except we went with our mother or dad, you know. They wouldn't let us go out to play with anybody else, and we didn't get it, but a whole lot of people had it. I've got an idea that 1 or 2 children died.
Did they?
And then they disinfected the school and did it all right before we went back again. Because scarlet fever is not considered much nowadays, is it? But in those days it was much more serious than it is now.
Perhaps they've got better drugs to treat it, haven't they?
Oh, they have drugs now.
I can remember my brother Brian having it, and he was in hospital, but he was away anyhow at the time at school.
Oh, later on they used to take them to that place just before Salisbury, didn't they?
Harlem or Harwood, whatever it's called. Oh, no, I know it. Old Sarah.
Old Sarah,
Yeah, that was an isolation hospital.
That was an isolation hospital for scarlet fever or diphtheria
Yeah.
and things like that.
How would they get there then?
But I imagine they sent somebody and fetched them.
Walk at the end of a long pole, actually.
I suppose because of ambulance by that time.
So I don't know what they did. But we were lucky we missed that.
Well, that couldn't have been much fun living in tents up there. If you're feeling bad and you're in tents as well, that must be really...
Or somebody can go in hot summer.
I expect Mrs. Blake would remember them.
Oh, I'm sure she would do,
Yeah, she said we could go back again and have another chat.
I can't think who else, you know. There's not many of us left
Well, from the village.
from the village that would know about it.
Yeah. Actually, when you look back through the church registers and things, there were quite a lot of fatalities with things like horses and all sorts of things.
Yes.
You know, we were at the vicarage some time back looking through the registers, and I can't remember the dates it went back to, but 1 or 2 people were killed, you know, having been
Somebody killed
struck
by
by
a horse
horses or
something,
all
yes.
sorts of things,
Yes.
and even run over by carts in the early days.
Mm.
And there seemed to be a few died by fire and all this sort of thing. Because I suppose they had a few fires, even that you can recall around this way, did they? Cottages burnt down?
I'm just trying to think. There was, I can't remember about a fire when I was a child, but I do remember when my boys were fairly small. There was a pair of cottages just up the road here. About where, you know where that gateway goes into Spencer's Field? You know, just before.
Yeah, just up on the right.
That's right. Well, just about inside there was a pair of cottages, and they were burnt down.
Really? Because I suppose, what would they do for a fire brigade? How long ago was that? Was that very far back?
See, it would be in the end of the 20s or early 30s.
Yeah. So, what was it a local fire brigade then, or would they get them out from somewhere
Where
else?
they came from. I expect they get them off the camp. Didn't they have them on the camps then?
Probably would do, because they aircraft around it.
Well, the fire brigade came from somewhere.
Yeah.
Did you hear the siren this morning?
I
Yes.
thought I heard
Did
it.
go,
Oh, yes, it was
Well,
going
about
for
12
quite a
o'clock.
while.
Yes.
But I couldn't make up my mind if it was over.
It was the support weapons wing.
Pardon?
It was the support weapons wing. It wasn't the
It
airfield.
wasn't the airfield.
No, it was the other one.
Well, this chap next door was up in there.
Yeah.
Oh, can you cut things out of that? If I
Oh,
say
yeah.
something you don't.
Yes.
Oh, yes. You won't be the first, but you've got to be careful what you play and to who you play it.
So the carrier used to go to Devizes and Salisbury, did
We used
he?
to go to Salisbury on Tuesdays and Saturdays and Devizes on Thursday when it was market day.
That was the same man.
The same man. It was, well, let me see. How far back was Mr. White? I remember Mr. White doing it. And he lived where the Whites live now, next to the spar shop.
What, everybody?
Archie White. You remember him, do you?
I don't know. You know, it's, as I remember quite a few old people.
And then he got a little bus. But up till then it was horse transport. And he used to go in and he would bring you back anything.
Yeah.
You know, if you were to see him in the morning, he used to go down the village in the morning about 9 o'clock or soon after, I suppose. And if you wanted something fetched back, you just see him and give him the money and tell him what you want. He used to fetch things back for people.
Yeah.
And you could go in the
And
car
he could go in the
if you
car if he wanted to, yes.
I wonder what that cost.
It wasn't much. Not in those days.
How long would it take then, roughly? I mean, Salisbury on the bus now is 40 minutes, isn't it?
It was a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
It was a long journey in those days.
Because I suppose the roads were pretty poor, weren't they? Or were they made up?
They weren't too bad, but not along the main.
They were made up, I suppose.
Who came round with the milk in those days?
There was heaps of milk. There was Tumors going round with milk. There was Harris's, that's where the jackets are.
Yeah.
They had cows, they had milk. The Tumors had milk. There was milk down at the farm where Mr. Lamond is. Oh, there was heaps of milk. And if you ran short, you could go along and get a drop more. Not like now. You'd be in a fix now if you wanted some.
Of course, Harris's had a big orchard opposite you here, didn't they?
No, Harris's didn't have it, but there was a big
I wouldn't know old Mrs. Hayward or something.
Hayward's had it for a bit.
Yeah.
But it used to go with the farm at Charleston, you know, where the Spencers are. Yeah. In fact, they put their horses in there now.
Yeah. But I can recall the apple trees all being uprooted.
Yes. There was old apple trees in there. And then Tumors had it, and Harold Tumor got a lot of them down.
I just recall we came home from school one day and all the trees were uprooted and they were all covered in apples.
Yeah.
You know, and we were sort of picking out as many as we could, but of course that was
They
it.
were old, you know, they're old.
Yeah.
And then who came round with the bread?
Oh, 2 or 3 bakers chasing after each other. There was the one where the spar shop is.
Yeah. Well, before Dick Pinchin's time.
Before Dick Pinchin, there was, what was their name? I can't think of it for the moment. But there were other people who did bake. And I'll tell you who did the baking for years. Bob Shepherd's father.
Mm-hmm.
He was the baker at that place. Oh, for 2 or 3 owners, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, following on one after. And he made most of them harvest dough cakes.
Yeah.
And you said just now that your mother would send you over to buy the dough. Did you
Yes.
did you go over and just buy a pound of dough and then come back and make the
bring
cake?
it back and she put it down and keep it warm, you know, and she used to make us a dough cake. Yes. Because you could go and get the dough, you know, in the morning. I suppose it was when they had it on the go for the bread or for their cakes.
Because it's only fairly recently they've actually stopped baking them, isn't it? Or relatively recent. Because I can remember queuing up on Monday mornings for bread then.
Yes.
Because you better run it over the weekend.
Well, then there was a baker at Enfield who came down regularly.
That would have been before Roy Dart's time, presumably.
There were Darts, did they?
Yeah,
But
Dart
there was
took it on.
somebody before that, I think.
Yeah,
Darts.
he had a proper bakehouse there.
Yes.
Those gone now, haven't they?
It's an awful shame that's all gone.
Well, you see, you haven't got a shop at all there.
Enfield hasn't got a shop, it's dreadful. Come down to Netherland to get them groceries and see what you pay on the bus to come that far.
And they don't seem to have the van deliveries either that they used to have. I mean, one time when you had all these thriving shops, you had van deliveries as well.
Yes,
But now you haven't got the shops or the van deliveries.
yes. Oh, we used to have everything brought round. 2 or 3 butchers chasing each other around. And then we had fellows from Pusey. They were the ironmongers. They came, they had paraffin, they had methylated spirits, they had soaps and brushes and garden equipments, and they'd bring you a tool next week if you hadn't got it on the van. And they came round when I was a little girl, right up till, how long have they been gone? 10 years perhaps?
Yeah, I suppose so.
Their last driver left them and went on the buses, and then they couldn't get anybody else to do it.
Because they did house removals as well, didn't they? Didn't they used to do house
Oh,
removals
they might
as
have
well?
done, I don't know.
I
They
think that was
might have.
another part of the whole street
But,
labor.
you know, you could get such a lot of things off of them, and you could count on them calling. But it wasn't a very, I can understand the chap leaving and going on the buses, because by the time he got here, often it was the evening. You remember him coming?
I can remember the fellow's van coming.
Yeah,
round
that's
there.
right. And by the time he'd get back to Pusey and finish off, it was late. And the last fellow gave it up to go on the buses. I suppose he would have got regular hours on.
Better pay, I suppose.
And
And better pay, I expect.
I expect so. Yes.
Of course, we used to get the odd tinkers and that around sharpening knives and things. I can remember
He
somebody.
still comes.
Does he still come?
He calls on me regularly.
Does it?
Mm.
But there used to be one like, with a push bike.
That's right.
You know, and he'd upturn the bike or something. And
Yeah.
I don't know what he did. Pedal away and
Yes.
drive his grindstone.
Yes. Oh, I haven't seen one for years.
I haven't seen one about.
Oh,
He
yes.
still comes.
Yes, he's been coming to me ever since I moved to Netherhaven.
Well, I haven't seen him for years. He doesn't come down the same.
He
Perhaps
goes
they
into
only-
the pub and spends it all.
Yeah. But perhaps they only go to known customers, you know, whereas I can't remember how it's out for business then. I suppose they go knocking doors or whatever, would they?
He's quite a character. He wears a leather hat that's stitched up one side.
Yeah.
Whiskers.
Is it?
Unshaven.
Fairly old chaps.
No, not really. No. About 60-ish.
Oh, fairly old.
Yeah, but you know, used to be 2 of them came round, but now there's only one. Used to come together.
Did you keep your own livestock, like the pigs and things? Because I mean, most
No,
people.
we did. We never had it.
You did?
But a lot of people did.
'Cause, yeah, I know. It
I
seemed to
mean,
be.
when we got married and came down here, the old folks, when I say old, they were a lot older, people next door, they always had a pig. For years, they always had a pig. They used to get a pig and they used to kill it in the middle of winter. And she used to make the most marvellous faggots and things. She always brought us along to a few faggots when she'd done them. Lovely. Yes, they always had a pig till they got too old to be bothered.
Yeah.
Oh, well, lots of people in the village had a pig. And they
'Cause
used to
I
have
can
their
eat-
own bacon and lard.
Because it wasn't sort of that long ago. At the village fetes, the bowling was for a pig.
For,
Ten
yes,
pig bowling.
that's right.
And I mean, these days they call it bowling for a pig, and it's probably a bottle of whiskey or whatever.
And lots of people kept hens. We
Yeah.
always had hens up till after my husband died.
Yeah.
I gave up having
You didn't have them in the orchard at the
them.
end
I had
here,
them
did
down
you?
in that orchard.
Oh, you
on
had them
the
there,
yard.
did you? Yeah.
Yes,
I can remember
yes,
lots of
that's right.
chickens in
Yeah,
there.
that's right, yes. Because that was taken away and the trees were cut down and it was ploughed up and added onto Spencer's field. But, yeah, we used to have hens down there.
Well, I suppose there were always bags of scraps to feed them on and all this sort of thing.
Because they had the scraps, but you had to buy some food for them.
Yeah,
And
great.
by the time my husband died, it was going up and up and up and up.
Oh,
The
yeah.
corn and then the meal. It's got ever so dear now, hasn't it? There's not many people around who've got any now, I don't think.
No, a few.
Brian Cope's got some.
Yeah. Pete Walker's got some on the allotment at the back.
Oh, yes, yes.
But there aren't that many, as you say, that keep chickens.
I've got 4.
Is
You've
it?
got 4 hens, have you?
That's all that's left.
I'm going to have some more.
I bet so in spring.
Oh, we used to have our own little chicks. You know, we had a broody hen.
Yeah.
My husband would sit the hen and we used to have the little chicks.
We bought some Rhode Island elms,
Yes.
and this was not last spring, the spring before. They were terrible birds. Very bad strain. So we killed them off last autumn. We might get some more next spring. See how it goes. I don't like to be without them.
No, it's nice to have your own eggs, isn't it? And have a bird sometimes for the house.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be all that good at seeing them off, the birds,
No, we're not very good at that.
It's a little bit of an art, isn't it?
Yes. If you're clever, you can just twist your leg
Aye, I
and that's
know.
it. But you've got to know how to
You guys
do
know
it.
exactly what you're doing, haven't you?
Yes, that's right.
Plus the fact, I don't know, I'm a bit funny about taking any sort of life like that. I know it's total hypocrisy, really, when you let somebody else do it for you, but I'm not particularly squeamish, it just doesn't seem right somehow.
No.
I mean, I wouldn't let it put me off eating meat or anything like that, but I just can't do it myself somehow.
There's one thing I remember, I don't know if it's of any interest. I remember seeing the comet,
Well, hey,
the Halley's Comet that's
Halley's
coming round in a few years' time.
yeah, when did that last?
That was about 1910 or
So I thought
something
you were
like
going to say
that.
1910 because that's the date that stuck in my mind, but I thought that was perhaps gone too far.
No, I think that's about when it was.
I've got a feeling it was
But I can
1910.
remember my mother taking us outside the back door in the evening, you know, when it was getting dark, so we could have a look at it.
Yeah, because
I think it was
that comes
1910,
round very
it was
infrequently,
about
doesn't it? Is it every 60, 70 years, something like that?
Something like that. It's due now in a few years.
Because there are other comets, aren't there? But that
Yes,
is
but
the brightest.
This one comes regularly.
Yeah. Well, I think they all go round on a cycle, don't they?
Yeah,
But
I
some
suppose
are better than others, and
Right.
Halley's or Halley's is the brightest. But, in fact, the last one that came, I can't think of the name of it, weren't they trying to sort of send a spaceship through the tail to try and work out what it was, you know, what it was
Yes,
composed
there
of?
was one 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember how long.
Yeah, because there've been
It wasn't
two, haven't there?
obvious.
One was a long way away. It's some sort of Egyptian type name, I think, comes to mind, but I can't think what it was called.
Did you have Sunday school outings and parties?
There used to be a sort of tea party on the vicarage lawn, that kind of thing. Yes.
And that would have been where Mrs. Way lives, is it?
Yes, that was the vicarage where Mrs. Way lives.
Was that big beech tree still there? beach.
Yes, oh yes,
That
yes.
was the first copper beach to come
The
to us.
lovely copper beech tree. It's still there.
Yeah.
Well, then you see there was another beech tree outside of Mrs. Oliphant's.
That's right, yeah.
There's quite a howdy-do in that.
I know there was.
And we were children, we used to play around that, coming home from school or going up to school. And in the autumn, we used to be looking for the beech nuts.
Yeah, I remember the
underneath.
beach nuts picking those.
Yes.
I can't remember why they pulled it down or cut it
They
down.
made out it was diseased or something.
That's what I'd heard.
Yes, oh yes. They
But it was
did.
all done before anybody could do anything
That's right,
about
it
it.
was all
wasn't
done in a hurry. No any time to stop them. Whether it really was diseased or not, I don't know.
I don't know who it was that actually took it down.
But I do know that the elephants didn't like the leaves, because they had to do all these massive leaves down on their lawn and on their flower borders just inside the wall. But and I don't know who to blame, whether it was really a bit bad or not.
Well, beech leaves are so good for the garden. It's not like a horse chestnut.
No, but I mean, if you've got one over your lawn, you don't really want them there.
Worms take them down. And
Oh, they do, yes, I know. I can remember there was a hullabaloo there that, once a tree's down, you can't put it back up again. And I mean, something like that would be 100, 150 years old, I suppose. Or more.
So you didn't have any Sunday school outings?
I don't remember going to one.
Where did you ever have?
And I mean, something like that would be 100, 150 years old, I suppose. Or more.
So you didn't have any Sunday school outings?
I don't remember going to one.
Where did you ever have a holiday?
We didn't have one regularly, no.
Where would you
In
go?
those days, people didn't go on holiday like they do
No.
now. We went. It's working out, and see that little black knob going round.
Ah, yeah, sorry, I was just making sure that the tape, they seem to have a lot of leader on them, that doesn't actually do anything. Yeah, sorry, you were saying about the holiday.
Your
Yes.
father wasn't there.
We went to Southsea.
Oh, did you? That was a long way to go.
Yes.
So you went by train?
We went by train from Bulford. We had somebody to take us to the station, and we went by train.
It's a jaunt.
And it was the most marvellous thing.
Is that the first time you'd seen the
first time
sea?
they'd taken me when I was quite a baby. Apparently my father and mother had been to Bournemouth a time or two when I was little, but I couldn't remember. But we went to Southsea then. And that was a lovely trip. And we talked about it and played games about it for months afterwards.
Where did you go there? Stop there for a weekend or a week? Or
We had a week.
a week.
You stay in boarding
We
house?
stayed at, yes. It was lovely.
You'd have been the talk of the village having that sort of a holiday, I think.
Yes, that's right, you was. Yeah. We did about 1911, something like that. It was a real hot summer. And my dad was a postman. And he used to walk from Netheravon Post Office to Ainsley and back every day.
What, to collect the mail?
He used to start from Netheravon Post Office, carrying a bag with mail to go.
Oh, delivering.
Well,
I see, yeah.
from the
Distribution, yeah.
He used to go round Chelston, through Chelston Field, into Faldene, round out through Ablington, and he used to call it all the big houses, Ablington House, Faldene House, Ablington farm, is it? The Siren Cot, Widmerston. He called it all the big houses. If they had letters to go, he took them for them, you see. And he used to walk to Amesbury. Used to go over Rathfin, do you call it?
Yeah, Ratford.
That's it, to Amesbury. And then he had a rest at dinner time and ate his picnic lunch. And then he came back in the afternoon. And he came back along the main road till he got to Faldene. And then he had to go into Faldene and drop off what mail there was for Faldene. And used to come through the Charleston branch and Netherhaven. Then he delivered round Netherhaven before he came on to tea.
Good. Sorry, carry on.
Yes?
I was going to say, what did he do in his spare time then?
Oh, he did his garden in the evenings.
Yeah. Do you know, that's what amazes me. I mean, you look at the size of those allotments out the back, and they're quite enormous, really.
Yeah.
And it amazes me that these fellas that probably work very long days, and perhaps their weekends, I don't know, were they 6 days a week they work?
Let's see, I think he went on Saturdays. Oh, I'm sure he went on Saturdays, because I've known my mother take us down Netherhaven and meet him in the afternoon. Yeah, Saturdays.
And I suppose Sunday was frowned on for anything too
Sunday,
active, wasn't it?
Yes, Sunday was his day off.
Yeah, but would you have gone and dug his allotment on a Sunday, or did he have to observe?
No,
the
you
Sabbath?
didn't dig your allotment on Sunday.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean, you see.
You went to church on Sunday.
Yeah. But, I mean, Sunday was going to church and dressed in your bib and tucker, was it?
Yeah.
And presumably, somebody would have a word if you were out digging your garden, or...
Well, no, but I mean, you wouldn't think of doing it.
Yeah.
You would have dreamt of doing the garden on Sunday.
Yeah, but that's what I mean,
It
you
was
know.
done in the evening.
So you've got this enormous allotment, or garden, or whatever, which they dug and planted and everything else afterwards.
Yeah.
I I mean, the days were no longer then than they are now, so...
No, but they managed it, didn't they?
Yeah, but it beats me, it really does. I mean, I suspect that they were much more capable and physically capable of doing, hard work, and probably didn't think too much about it. You know, whether we're that much softer these days that if we dig a garden we've all got bad backs and blisters and calluses and whatever else.
Too soft, don't they?
Yeah, but that's it, you see. I think this is it. Whereas the people in those days might go out and turn over half an allotment and not think twice about it.
Well, you know that when you get down to the bottom here, where those sheds are,
The old barn.
Haywood stuck up on that corner. Well, and you know how far it is till you get up to where the cliff sort of begins.
Yeah.
Well, that first field used to be about 5 or 6 allotments.
Yeah.
And they ran from that path up to where there used to be a ridge across.
Yeah.
Right. And people used to do them. The 5 or 6 that were there, that first piece of field was allotments.
Yeah.
You wouldn't remember. I remember old Jimmy Taylor having one, and the Drapers, and
Fred and Harry.
Harry and Fred.
Fred,
That's
yeah.
right. Yes, well,
Remember
they
them.
used to have one.
Because they were council roadmen, weren't they? Didn't they work on that? Harry certainly was.
Harry did some road work. Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Because, I mean, that was another feature, wasn't it? I mean, every village had at least a roadman.
We always had a roadman who kept the roads tidy.
Mm.
And the grass verges. They weren't untidy like they are now.
No.
Ditches.
And the ditches, they were all tidy.
But I suppose each individual man had his patch or his area and
That's right.
took pride in
In doing his
work,
patch.
you know.
That's right, yeah.
And there was probably a degree of competition, I suspect, between them.
Might have been, yes.
Not so long since the old boy Faldene died.
Knuckle Shepherd.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even up to a couple of years ago before he died, I mean, that back road, he was always in the hedges.
Always
chopping away.
down there, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Digging out the ditch to let the water drain away.
yeah.
It used to look nice when it was all kept down.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
But then that's the council affair there, they can't afford to pay them.
Well, that's it. I mean, they get mechanised, and you get a tractor that can do the work of 10 men at half
But
the
it
price.
doesn't do it. And you know how they did last summer? A mechanised thing came down one day in the middle of summer with a knife on about so big. It came down and it went up the road and it cut the verge as far as this knife would go and left the rubbish there and went. And that was our trim for the year.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
It's awful. Do you put grumbles like that in there?
Well, whatever goes in comes out, I can assure you. In a way, though, it's nice to hear what people have to complain about, you know, because, I mean, you've experienced quite a lot of changes.
Yes.
Not all for the good, obviously, and not all for the bad. So, you know, how you feel about how things have changed is just as important as anything else,
Yes,
really.
yes. Well, some things are better, but some things aren't, are
Yeah.
they?
Well, that's right. I mean, nobody would complain about fridges and washing machines, I suspect. Television's probably a different category. You know, just thinking of how machinery has come into the home. I mean, it's difficult to imagine each woman with her wash tub and scrubbing board and all this sort of thing, and yet probably in the day that was a bit of a refinement for a lot of people.
Start off with a copper.
Yeah.
But we had
Where you light the fire and then.
Yes. But we did a little shed out at the back. That was the wash house for both these two houses.
Yeah.
We had that wash house. They were not like that round about government ones. They put up one wash house for the pair, you see. So the old lady next door and I, we used to take turns to have Monday for the washing. And you got the water from down there. You carried your buckets of water round the back and filled up your copper.
Yeah.
And you lit your copper fire. And when the water was warm, you went out there and did the washing.
Yeah.
And you didn't think anything of it because you didn't have anything any better, you see.
Did you have an old mangle out the back there for running it through?
I had an old, mangle thing, but not like a spinner or anything like that.
A wooden one.
The thing with a handle. Yeah, that's right. To run it. But people have got it all so easy now.
Oh yeah, just making the payments.
Pardon?
It's just making the payments on it these days.
Oh,
Isn't it?
that's the hardest part, I expect.
But you know, this is it, because each of these jobs, like now, if you just throw stuff in a washing machine and it does it,
Yes.
that's probably saved at least an hour out of the day from time gone by, when your washing might have taken an hour.
Oh, it took longer than that when you
whatever.
had to do it by hand.
And the more things that you had to actually do, I mean, did you just not do as much in those days? You know, would you not have had time to, like, do the washing and do this and go shopping? Is there more scope these days to do a lot more things
Oh, I
within
should think
the hours of the day, some type of
so.
thing?
Because
People didn't
people,
travel away as they do now.
No.
To go to sort of in a shop in those days would have been quite an event.
yes.
But, you know,
You
they've
had
always
enough
thought.
to do at home to keep you busy all the time.
Well, this is it. You see,
Doing
where
it the
they've created
old-fashioned
all this
way.
leisure time. So say.
Yeah.
We didn't have any leisure.
Yeah.
So not much anyway.
Yeah, but this is it, and that's what I say about like digging allotments and things. When you were required to do a full day's work from whenever, 7 o'clock, I suppose, would they start, something like that, or before?
That was their leisure then, wasn't it, really?
Yes, it was their leisure, but you know, my impression is that they may have gone to work, say, from 7 till 5 or whatever, quite a long day.
7 often.
Yeah.
And by the time you've got home and perhaps had your tea or whatever, you know, you just haven't got the time to dig your own garden or do your own allotment or whatever.
Yeah.
And Sunday was taken out. You weren't allowed to do anything on Sunday, whether by convention.
I don't know whether I wouldn't say nobody ever did.
No, but it was probably a little social
not the
stigma.
dumb thing, anyway.
That's right. It was the accepted way of doing things.
Yes.
Were you sort of restricted in the games you played on a Sunday? Because I was as a child.
We didn't.
We weren't allowed to play boisterous games. We weren't allowed to have hoops out in the road on a Sunday or skipping ropes.
No.
Well, we had dolls and books.
Yeah, it's quiet
Sort of
games.
thing. It's another word now.
Oh, yes, I'm sure it is.
And yet you see the change in, what's it, about 30 years between us, isn't there? The change in art, well, it's so slowly then, isn't it, the pace and the change in that. But now it's,
Well, it's
I mean, the
going-
change between us.
Things are going so fast now.
Mm.
As for these computers, I went to get my pension. I hadn't been for 3 weeks because I went away over Christmas. And I generally go down with the Wilmots across the road. And they went away for Christmas and they went back on the last week on the Thursday. So I didn't go to this week. I had 3 lots of pensions to get. Because I added to the lot before I'm on a piece of paper, knew I had to get. When I get down there, the postmaster is doing it on a
Calculator.
Oh, yeah. I said, I added it up in my head. I said, I haven't got one of those.
Yeah, but I suppose in a way, I mean, he could add it up in his head. He might
you
get it
couldn't
wrong.
do, yes.
At least with that, well, the trouble is you blindly accept what it says.
I know that.
If you punch in a few figures and it says £10 or £100, you sort of think, oh yeah, it says £100,
Yes.
you know, and pay the 100 or the 10.
But Tony, what happens if, as you're doing it, you make a mistake and
Oh,
stick your
yes.
finger in the wrong one?
Well, yeah, you could well do that.
I should think so.
But in the same way that mentally you might add things up incorrectly, you know, and say
Yes.
make an error or whatever. I suppose it's a double check, really, isn't it?
People tend to rely more on the machine.
Well, you do,
Yeah, it's opting out, isn't it?
in a way, yeah. See, I add figures up at work, statistics for 30 odd days,
Yes.
and I add them all up, and I divide it by 31, and my mean is whatever.
Yes.
And I accept that. Admittedly, I sometimes do it 2 or 3 times just to double check. And really, rather than the electronic calculator, I prefer the
To
hand.
do it yourself.
Well, yeah, I do very often do that.
Yeah.
I do it one way and check it another.
Yeah.
But I prefer to punch figures into one of these things where you pull the handle and it prints it out, and then, you know, if you think you've made a mistake, you can check them all off again.
Like they have in the shops.
Yeah, you can actually
so
read
then
it
you
off.
can see what you've got then.
Whereas if
Yes.
it's just a calculator and you punch your figure, you've got no record of what you've actually put into the thing.
Yeah.
I know some of them have, but
Yeah.
most of them haven't.
But you know, I always listen on the radio to things like Top of the Form and any sort of quizzes and things. And one day when they had Top of the Form, one set of questions was all about computers. And I didn't know what he was talking about.
No.
The questions he asked those children, things that I'd never heard of. But what happens? How do the teachers go on? If they got to go and study the things before they...
Oh, yeah. They're constantly on courses and, you know, studying new techniques, new methods. Well, that's the impression I get, you know, that there's quite a lot of time devoted just to keeping updated this stuff.
I should think so.
And, of course, they get a lot of literature as well. Well, I suppose Richard does.
Advisors come
Because
on.
Vic's oldest girl, she's a school teacher. She lives up at Banbury. She's at the school just outside Banbury.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine she's got to learn it up so that she can cope with the children in school.
Oh, yes, that's right.
You had 2 boys, did you?
I had 3 boys.
3 boys, no girls.
No.
And did they go to school in Nether Odin?
Um,
Fiddleton?
now wait a minute. They went to Bidderton first. And I don't know what happened. Why did they go to Netheravon after that? There must have been.
Well, when the
Did they
secondary
go down
education
there when
came
they
around,
were 11?
yeah, originally primary and junior education was in Fiddleton,
Yes,
and then at 11 you took the 11 plus
yes.
or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when you failed that, you went to Netheravon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Netheravon was the finishing school, if you like,
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
it?
that's
11
right.
to
Well,
15.
Dick went
or
down
whatever.
there, but Peter went to the Bishop's School. Oh, and John went down there.
So presumably Peter would have gone from Fiddleton, presumably,
He went from Fiddleton
Successfully.
to the Bishop's School.
yeah.
And did you have these children, were they born at home?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And was there a midwife?
yes. You had a district nurse living in, what's it, number
99.
100, 99 or 100.
Nurse
The
Lewis,
last
I
of that
recall.
row there.
With
Yes.
Mrs. Critchley.
That was
wasn't it?
Nurse Lewis, was it?
Nurse Lewis was the last
Do you remember
one.
who was there before Nurse Lewis?
Now you've asked me something. There was a different one before her.
I can only ever recall Nurse Lewis.
Yeah, she was
Nurse.
there for quite a
She must
while.
have been there for a long time, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was there a long time. I can't remember who was
Do you
there.
remember when the district nurse came to Netheravon, the first one?
There was one there, when I was quite a little child.
Yes.
Because the ladies had a sort of nursing association.
Yes.
The ladies
yes.
each, I think, sort of organised it. And all the, you see, there was no health service.
No.
No. So if you had a doctor, if you had a nurse, you had to pay.
Mm.
But if you paid a subscription to the nursing association, then if you needed the nurse, you either had her free or you had her at a cheaper rate. I can't remember which it was now. But the nurse, we had a nurse here when I was quite a child, and Nurse Walker, her name was,
Yes.
and she lived. Well, they had that house. Is it 100 or 99? It's the last one in that little row after the ornamental.
99 sticks in a row.
Last
in my
one.
mind, but it might well be 100.
Nurse Lewis.
When Nurse Lewis,
So they kept that house for the district
that was the district nurse's house.
Yeah.
They used to have a little plate on the door, didn't it, district
Well, she
nurse?
probably did.
She
Yes,
did.
yes, that's right.
So she was the midwife as well,
Yeah,
was
yeah,
she?
that's
Yes.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And where,
people did.
there wasn't a doctor in the village, was there?
No. There was a doctor at Uphaven who came down here. But the first doctor in the village was when Dr. Holland came, and he went into the house. Oh, where you remember, Doctor?
Yes.
You, Dr. Jones?
Went to into the cottage.
The next, the Brody Cottage,
Brody
that's
Cottage,
right. Well,
yeah.
Dr. Holland was there for a bit, wasn't he?
Mm.
And then he went to Durrington, and Dr. Jones was there, wasn't he?
Jones was there,
That's
yeah.
right, yeah. They were sort of partners. But before that, the doctor who came down to nothing.
And he had a clinic in, is it where Mrs. Shepherd used to live under the clock? Did he used to have a
Yeah.
surgery there somewhere?
He used to have one, at one time, it was at the Jaggers, well, the Harris's place.
Mm.
Oh, but then that's going back long, long ago. I can't remember where the last one was. Might have been where the clock is. They just had one room in somebody else's house
Yes,
at that
yes.
time, you see.
We've learned quite a bit, haven't we? Something.
Right?
I said we've learned quite a bit this afternoon.
I don't know whether it's any good. You get some sorting out.
We'll let John sort it out.
Yeah, John's wanted something. Do you remember going in? Was there a little sweet shop where you could go and buy halfpenny worth of sweets?
fact, when I first went to school, there was an old lady in where Mrs. Shepherd is. We used to have some. That's where Mrs. Charlie Shepherd is, opposite the school.
Did she make them?
I don't know.
No.
I can't remember much about her.
Used to have those little corner bags.
Oh yes, that's the sort they used to have.
Did you ever have the ice cream man coming round here? Stop me and buy one?
Not in those days. You never heard of him. The ice cream man in those days. Didn't even know what an ice cream was.
What about the milk deliveries? Were they always in bottles, as you recall?
No.
That was the old bit, was it?
They came round, they had a pail
Yeah.
with a lid, and they had a measure, a dipper, or a couple of dippers, which hung just inside half a pint and a pint, and you went to the door with your jug, and he dipped you up a pint, or whatever you wanted, and put in your jug.
Yeah.
It was a long time before there weren't any bottles, not till we went. They start in schools first, I wonder.
You didn't have free milk in school when you were a child, did you?
Oh, no, we didn't have any free anything.
How did you go on for storing food and stuff? I mean, fridges are all so easy these days.
You didn't have fridges
No, I
and
know that.
deep freezers and things.
But
Well,
things like meat and that, which you need to perhaps keep for a long time, how would you go
probably
about that?
didn't keep it for a long time. You had a meat thing with that the flies and things couldn't get out, didn't you?
Oh, I
With
know
a
that
mesh
fine
cover.
mesh, yeah.
Yes.
And did it have a marble top or base or something? Sheet of marble?
Sometimes there were just a little box outside the back door somewhere in the shade, wasn't there?
That's right, yes.
But
You
some
just put it in
cottages
your-
had bigger farmhouses had a sort of cold slab,
they
didn't
had
they?
cold, yes.
Yeah.
For doing the
But then we didn't go out and buy half a sheet like we do nowadays and put in the deep freeze. We just bought things each week as we wanted them.
Yeah.
Really few.
But how about the ones then that kept pigs and then slaughtered them and kept those? Would they salt it down?
When those sides of bacon are salted, they'll keep for ages.
Yeah. Or you just hang them in the shed or
Right
wherever.
hang them in the shed or
Nothing could get at it.
that kitchen or somewhere. And they keep, you see, when they've been salted.
Yeah.
My mother can remember tasting her first tomato.
Yeah, I don't suppose they've been around so very long.
They were called love apples.
Yeah.
That was when she was a child. She's about the same age as you.
Yes.
She's 2 years older, I think. She was. That was
Then we used to have a fishman.
Oh yes.
A fishman who came on Wednesdays. I think he came from Pewsey. He came for years and he brought fish and fruit. I can remember my mother buying bananas. And we used to sometimes have some shrimps. Yeah.
Cockles.
We didn't have cockles. I don't know whether he got them, but he used to have shrimps sometimes.
Yeah. I remember the fishman, was it Taxman or somebody from Durrington?
Oh, that's more recent.
Much more recent,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
But that was a similar thing that he
Yeah,
brought
that's right.
wet
Yes,
fish
that's right.
and
Yes.
fruit and veg and
Yes.
stuff.
But he packed up because he said he couldn't make a go of it. He had to pay so much to buy his fish that it was too dear, you know.
Once transport got more
When he
expensive as well.
brought around, it was too
There's a
dear
man
to
coming
sell.
round now.
With fish?
Yes, yes. Hasn't he called on you?
No.
He comes round on Tuesdays or Thursdays. Thursdays, isn't it?
I know which
Thursdays.
one that comes around, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, on
Very,
Thursdays
very
with
nice
fish.
fish. Yeah.
Usually if we want any fish, we get it in Sorted Market or something like that. you
Yes.
know, or even get a frozen fish.
There's a very good man on Tuesdays in Amesbury with a stall.
Yeah.
That's fresh fish.
I suppose you don't find you travel about much,
I
do you?
don't
Mrs. Mead?
travel about very much now. No.
Well, I mean, it takes so much.
It's an effort to go now.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're going to go on the bus, that's quite a bit of money gone before you've gotten anywhere, isn't it?
It's quite a long walk from here, isn't it?
Yes, it's quite an effort now to me. I don't often go.
Yeah. Well,
I've still got 2 or 3 tickets in hand. You know, the old people's
what concessions?
tickets. Yes.
Yeah. Do you just not have the inclination to go as well?
No, it's too much.
Well, I mean, if it's a hard effort, you're not going
You
to
walk
bother.
over to the bus and then you get into town and you've got to wander around the shops and do what you want and then you get back
And it's the carrying of it as well,
and
isn't it?
carry what you've got, so I don't go very often.
I bought a shopping trolley years ago, and it's festering away up in the attic, I think. Never ever use it. We used to at one time. But then that was when we were travelling on the buses. I suppose with the car you don't bother. Put it in the tools, so give it away.
Would you like a cup of tea before you go home?
Tony has to go to work tonight, so Tony has to go to work tonight.
What are you?
Yeah, I'll have to be away by 4:30.
You've got to be there. You've got to go to work. Would you go to Uphaven now?
Yeah, in the Met Office up there.
Studying the weather?
Well, yeah.
Are we going to have anything any better?
I wouldn't like to say that. I'd like to say it, and I'd like to be right. I certainly wouldn't bet on it.
No. Cut that out of there.
Yeah. Switch it off now. Relax.
Well, it doesn't do any harm, let it run until it stops.
But you say past. You've got to go by 5:30. Is that what you say?
Well, I'll have to be away about 5:30, yeah. If you want a cup of tea, yeah, I'll have one, yeah, fine.
Lovely. That's my fire going down too.
There's not so much elm about as there was, is there, either?
No, I expect it's the people who got through a lot of it now.
Where's the coal outside? Do you want me to get something for you?
No, there's something.
Oh, I see. No, I was going to say, if you want it filled up or anything like it.
Infinite, if you like.
Yeah, where is it? At the back?
In the-
Well, you show me where to go and I'll fill it up.
Okay, there's some in there.
So you will it on, you find that you've burned somebody's week supply, you know.
He's in the dirty old coal house, shoveling up coal.
Good.
Oh, dear. Oh, I can't get by that way. I should fall over the cable. That won't do.
Oh.
Yeah, I find it in the dark. If your eyes trying to get used to it, it's too bad. It's just giving it time.
There's nothing wrong there.
Is it stopped? No, it's still going. That was Mrs. Mead
Blower Street, recorded by Eileen and myself on Friday the 13th of January 1984.